What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of The Dig, a series dedicated to helping you improve profitability on your farm.
I'm Aaron, and this is Colin.
I'm Ellie.
Whoa.
Hey guys.
Hey,
What are you
Ellie.
doing here?
Oh, I snuck in. I saw on your calendar you were shooting a dig episode about learning projects.
Yeah?
We are.
So,
You wanted to join in?
yeah, I figured so.
Okay. Yeah.
Only makes sense.
Okay. Well, are we ready to dig in or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's dig in.
Well, Ellie, I mean, since you're here in studio with us now, kind of works out, I guess. Ellie here is our PFR data and logistics manager in PFR, and she also helps Colin and I out in the field when she gets a little bit of free time. So a big part of Ellie's job is managing those summer intern learning projects. So I'm just gonna turn it over to her and she can tell you guys all about them now.
Each year, the PFR interns at all of our locations choose a learning project for the summer to observe, perform, gather info, and then draw results from that. Once the data has been analyzed and conclusions have been made, they then present their findings to the company at the end of the summer. These different projects are deeper dives into products and practices that PFR is currently looking at, or at least we hope to keep looking at in the future. The different learning projects are conducted across multiple years and multiple locations, just like we do with our PFR studies. We don't have time to go through all those projects today, but we have picked 3 projects to dig into today. Colin, why don't you start us off?
All right, so the first learning project we want to talk about is urea coating. So in this learning project, we're using different polymer coating blends driven by heat release versus the soil moisture. So we took the urea, we placed it in mesh bags. Can I ask you what you're doing?
I'm just showing them what the mesh bag is like that we put the urea in.
It's not this big.
Well, I know, but it's similar.
No.
It gives them a good idea.
No, get out of here. Go. Go on,
Okay.
get. Anyway, the bags and temperature loggers were placed inside the corn plot between the rows to simulate incorporation. We collected the samples and loggers at different increments of days after application. We cleaned and we transferred the granulars into a convection oven to be able to dry them down. And then we calculated the percent of nitrogen released. So we think about blend number 1 being a short day release. And the results were less nitrogen released in the no-till early on compared to the conventional till. We think about the temperatures we had early on this past year, and we think about the no-till section being cooler versus conventional till being warmer. That's why we think less nitrogen release in the no-till. So let's move to blend number 2, which is a longer day blend. As temperatures rise throughout the growing season, there are pretty consistent percentage nitrogen released between the 2 different tillages.
All right, so the project I'm going to talk about is our soil sample depth project. And the goal here is to learn how soil sampling depth might affect soil test results. So how did we do this study? We chose a uniform field with no fertilizer or lime spread recently. So we pulled samples from no-till and conventional till areas at 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, and 8-inch depths. We pulled 10 cores from each depth and we replicated that 3 times. We then sent that on to a lab for different soil characteristic tests to be ran, and we compared the results. So the results, this is the second year of the project at 2 different locations each year. As the sample core depths get deeper, we found that actually the ppm and different nutrients decreased in most. So as we look at these graphs, we look at phosphorus, you can see that it does decrease and it changes. And then when we look at potassium, same thing, consistent decrease. So when we look at the sulfur one here, we can see that that decrease is a little bit different. It's not as drastic and it kind of plateaus a little bit more.
I think we would all agree that carbon sequestration and carbon markets are a huge topic right now in agriculture and really just in our society as a whole. And because of that, we wanted to start understanding more about the elements of carbon sequestration and how to measure it. So we sat down and we came up with 5 categories that we think we know might change carbon. And using studies in PFR we're currently doing, including tillage, cover crop use, different nitrogen rates, drainage, and crop rotation, we can use various testing methods and practices throughout the season to see what kind of influences we can have on those carbon levels. So what we did is we went out, we'd take a composite soil sample once a month at an 8-inch depth. We tested for organic carbon, organic matter, total nitrogen, total carbon, and other characteristics. So we're just gonna take a look at a couple of the studies that we're doing across multiple locations. So the first study we're gonna take a look at is our cover crop placement study. You'll notice we have on the graphs a control of no-till and then 2 different systems of cover crop placement. And what you'll see between all of those graphs is we don't have a whole lot of difference between those treatments. But we think about this being only the first year we're doing this, we're not gonna see a whole lot of benefit from that cover crop use after just 1 year. So this year was essentially a starting point for us just to set a base for results going forward. So we take a look at our nitrogen rate study. We notice that organic matter levels and nitrogen levels kind of stay the same across all the treatments once again. One thing that's interesting to point out is in the total carbon graph that we have here, you'll notice in those situations where we may have excess nitrogen, so those higher nitrogen rates we're using, our total carbon levels were actually just a little bit higher. So excess nitrogen in the soil can lead to slightly higher carbon levels in the soil, which was something that's kind of interesting that we noticed. It does seem too that between both of these studies that the total N increases drastically in September, whereas the total carbon and organic matter stays pretty consistent and slightly decreases throughout the growing season. Carbon and nitrogen ratios are something that can be pretty easily overlooked but play a major role in our soils. If you take a look at the graph that we have here, you'll notice that between all three of these treatments, a conventional tilled ground, no-till, and no-till cover crops, all of them had carbon and nitrogen ratios that were decreasing throughout the year. But you'll notice some of these treatments, more specifically the no-till and cover crop ones, don't decrease as much throughout the year. So something interesting to keep looking at because we know, like I said, that C to N ratio plays a really important role in nitrogen release and really mineralization of a lot of different nutrients in our soils. As I said earlier, we didn't expect to see a whole lot of difference this year, as we know carbon sequestration is a long process and can't just be done in 1 year. We're really just kind of testing the waters and trying to learn more about this as we go forward.
So this was only 3 out of our 10 projects we did this year. And if you remember, we said this is just a deeper dive into different studies that we maybe are doing in PFR, maybe we're gonna do in PFR, or maybe just something we're interested in. So we're always open to suggestions for learning projects. And if you have any, make sure to leave a comment below. Speaking of leaving a comment, if you guys like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Whoa.
Hold your
What's
horses,
wrong?
hold your horses.
It's our part.
You weren't up here though.
You gotta wait on us. This is our show, remember?
We're here now.
Okay. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on another edition of The Dig.
Hey, I got it.
You got it that
Good
time.
job.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We
You're
got a lot
honored.
going on. We took mesh bags and we placed Colin inside the mesh bag.
Can I ask you what you're doing?
I'm just mimicking what we did with the urea.